Radiohead. Who likes Radiohead? I like Radiohead. I like them enough to wear this shirt that I've had for over 10 years. And you know what? The kids like vintage look these days. So boom, vintage Radiohead. Last week I did a video on why designing faster will help you make more money. But a lot of people came up to me and were like, okay, so that's good and everything. How do you actually design faster? So I'm gonna give you my 5 tips and tricks on what I do to basically help improve my speed when I do work and really dramatically cut down the amount of overall time it takes for me to do my projects, okay? So without further ado, let's get started. My first tip that's really gonna shave off a tremendous amount of time in your workflow and that you're gonna see immediate results is know your hotkeys. So have you guys ever seen professional gamers play like StarCraft or maybe even Fortnite? And those players are just like hitting a million hotkeys a second. Now, if you were to treat design the same way and you just know your hotkeys from like the back of your hand, you're gonna be able to design a heck of a lot faster than if you didn't use any hotkeys at all. And the amount of time that you would save from just knowing how to do hotkeys as opposed to not knowing any hotkeys is like anywhere from 10% faster to like 90% faster in your workflow. So let's take Adobe Illustrator, for example. The next time you want to put some text on the canvas, instead of looking on the side for the T icon and typing something out there, you can just press T. Or if you want to draw a shape, you can actually just press M instead of looking for the icon. Here's another example. Imagine you have 5 squares, okay? And the green square for some reason is, at the very, very back. But you want to position the square where it's 2 above the bottom 2 and then 2 under the top 2, right? So what you can do, one method is you can right click on the green rectangle, go to arrange, and then you can go to bring forward. And then you can do that again, right click, arrange, bring forward. And then that will place it in the 3rd spot. Or you can just use hotkeys and press Control right bracket twice. And then so by right clicking and going into 2 menus like twice, that probably, let's just say, takes like 3-4 seconds. But by pressing Control forward bracket twice, it's like takes literally half a second. So talking about saving time, that's just one example, one super simple example of how one simple hotkey can save you like 4 seconds off of something, right? And if you do this over the course of projects, if you save like 4 seconds here, 5 seconds here, and you start realizing that the things that would usually take you maybe like 10 seconds can be reduced down to 2 seconds, you're gonna save hella minutes over the course of the entire project, right? And again, time is money, so the faster you work, the more you make. For the people that actually know their hotkeys really well, I want to kind of segue this into my second point, which is taking shortcuts. And what is it that I mean by taking shortcuts? Okay, so taking shortcuts, well, before I get into that, let's just basically say this. In any of the design programs, you can get to any result in a billion different ways, right? So to create the same logo, there's like, a million different avenues you can take to achieve the same result. So my idea of a shortcut or taking shortcuts is basically knowing and understanding your application or your program and all of its functions well enough to achieve the same result in the fewest amount of steps possible. This could mean, creating your hotkeys, or maybe creating an action script, or maybe finding creative ways to use different tools that's in substitute of other tools that you would normally use. Here's an example. I'm gonna create this like faux Adidas logo right here. And so what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna create 2 versions of it, okay? So I'm gonna basically draw out 3 rectangles. I'm gonna make a copy of it, okay? Rotate them each by, I don't know, like 45 degrees. And then this one, I'm gonna use the divide function, right? So I'm basically gonna draw a line across the bottom where I think it's gonna end. And then I'm gonna select the whole thing. I'm gonna go to my Pathfinder menu, and then I'm gonna click divide. I'm gonna select everything, I'm gonna ungroup, and then I'm going to delete the bottom 3, and then there, I have the Adidas logo. Now, this is what I'm going to find out. There's another tool that kind of similarly does what I'm trying to do to get the same result. And so I'm going to take the same 3 bars. I'm going to draw a rectangle over the bottom parts that I want to kind of get rid of, okay? And then that line is going to be lined up where I put the divide on the first logo. And then I'm going to use this tool called the Shape Maker, where this basically just like, it's like the entire Pathfinder tool put into one tool. It's actually really cool. So I'm gonna select the Shape Maker tool, and I'm gonna select everything inside this rectangle that I drew, and I'm just gonna delete that. if you put these side by side, the difference is probably, maybe 1 whole second, right? Which it doesn't seem like it's a lot, but it's the concept that there's a lot of different ways to go about the same problem, and some ways are just simply faster than the other. And it's always worth exploring a different way. Because the way I think about it, no matter what I'm doing, there's always a better and faster way to do it. And if there isn't, that's good news, because that means you're doing that one thing as fast as it can possibly be done. So we're always trying to strive, at least I am always trying to strive to find that super streamlined method in all of my programs and all my applications to get to point A to B as fast as possible. So now that we talked about shortcuts, let's take a step back and talk about the third point, which is streamlining your workflow. So the third tip I want to talk about is streamlining workflow. And streamlining workflow basically means to take an overall look at your entire project as a whole and kind of break it down into sections or tasks. And it helps to make a list of all the tasks that you have to do. And then once you make that list, try to group the tasks that are similar together. So one of the benefits of grouping tasks together and working on them simultaneously is the fact that once you're working within an application, let's say for example Lightroom, you're going to be more efficient and more concentrated if you were to just work in Lightroom alone, as opposed to working in Photoshop, Lightroom, and Illustrator at the same time. Now, here's an example. Okay, so let's just say you're working for like a fashion company, right? And they want a series of 4 ads. All of these ads need to have 3 components, right? They all need to have a photo, they all need to have a layout design, and they all need to have branding and typography. We're gonna put that together in one. It's like Spock. So with the requirements on the table, there's 2 ways to kind of go about this project. You can design each ad individually, one by one. So for example, you can search for the photo, you can edit the photo, you can put it into the layout, and then you can put the typography and branding on top, right? And then you rinse and repeat for ads 2, ads 3, and ads 4. And at the very end, you're gonna have to go over everything to kind of make sure they feel like they're in the same campaign or in the same series, okay? Or the second method of doing this is the way that I like to do it, and I think this is a lot more streamlined, but I would approach it by looking at all 4 ads at the same time. I would search for 4 images, I would edit all 4 images at the same time, then I would put all 4 images down and then design the layout on top of the images. Just kind of assuming that the image is like a really strong focal point in these ads, right? Of course, depending on what type of project it is, your layout process might come before the photo process. For the sake of this project, I'm just gonna say photo is important and I'm putting the layout over the photo. But anyways, and then I would put all the typography on at the same time or the branding at the same time. And I would finish basically all 4 ads at the same time. And the benefit of doing this is that all of your ads are going to basically come out with like a pretty, much like 70-80% congruent type of feel. They are all gonna feel like they've been designed at the same time. And this is really good because by the time you've finished all 4 of those processes, all of your ads are gonna really have this good, consistent look already. And all you're gonna have to do at that point is just kind of do like a minor adjustments on all of them because they all kind of already feel like they're in the same series, because in actuality, they're all kind of designed at the same time. So these are just some really important things to really keep in mind when you're trying to shave the amount of time off of all of your projects, okay? And we gotta put some benchmarks to these, okay? And the only way to do that is going to be my 4th tip, timing yourself. My 4th tip is something that I think is very important, but I think a lot of people won't be able to realize its value, at least immediately, but it's to time yourself. And timing yourself is very important because it gives you a frame of reference on how long it takes for you to complete a task or a project, right? So for example, if it takes you 2 hours to design 5 icons, you have a frame of reference now. It takes you about 2 hours to design 5 icons. And the key here is to not only time yourself, but to always challenge yourself and always push those goals. So let's go back to the icon example. Now you know it takes 2 hours to design 5. Now let's set a goal, okay? Without compromising any quality, let's try to design 6 icons in 1 hour and 45 minutes. And if you're able to succeed, then that's awesome. You know, you now know you can actually work and be more productive in a shorter amount of time, right? Now, in order to kind of achieve that, you're gonna have to do a lot of the things that we kind of talked about before, right? Which is basically streamline your workflow, take more shortcuts, and learn more hotkeys. It's just that simple. So don't forget, time yourself, set goals. And another reason why this is really beneficial is because now that you have a frame of reference, you can use that as a leverage to go into a client negotiation. You can say, look, I know you're on a time crunch. I can get this done in X amount of minutes or X amount of hours or X amount of days because I've done this many projects. I've timed myself in all of them. And I know it takes me about, on average, X amount of time to finish this project. So if you need this, I can definitely get it done for you in this time frame. And that's gonna ultimately build your value as a designer. For someone who really knows the intricacies and the time it takes for them to do anything and everything in their workflow. Now I want to talk about the last tip, which I think is super easy, anybody can do, but at the same time, it's not so easy and not everybody does do it, even myself, and that's to eliminate distractions. Eliminating distractions, the easiest, hardest thing that anybody can do, even myself. So I basically made this commitment to myself a long time ago that when I work, I want to be laser focused on what I do. I don't want to be distracted by anything. I turn off all my social media. I don't chat with my friends. I turn off the Netflix. I say, hey, grandma, I'm gonna call you back later. And I try to remove myself from everything that requires me to actively pay attention to. I throw on my headphones, I put some music on, and then I try to get into the zone as fast as I can. Because once you get into the flow state, that's when you're the most efficient. That's when you produce the most. And you know, you don't want to get out of that flow. You don't want to get out of that rhythm. And by being constantly distracted, it's really hard to kind of get back into the zone. Divided attention has a dramatic negative impact on productivity and retention, you know, according to like some studies, right? I found this to be true. When I spend 1 to 2 hours of completely uninterrupted, completely concentrated, super focused work, I was way more productive than as if I spent 8 hours completing the same task. And at the same time, I was like, kind of like, you know, watching an episode of this, chatting with my friends online. You know, it's just like, I feel like when I do it the 8-hour way, I just lose a whole day. My productivity goes down and I kind of like have like difficulties remembering what I did. And, you know, it just became really inefficient. And at the end of the day, when you're inefficient like that, you're just basically bleeding money. You're making a lot less money when you do that. So that's what I try to always do. Although it doesn't really happen, you do have to check email sometimes. You do have to check your IMs because if it's client related, you still have to answer it. But, you know, answering client requests kind of falls into the same realm of that same type of work, so it's kind of okay. As long as you're not being completely distracted by something that's completely unrelated, then it's gonna be all good. So I hope you enjoyed my 5 tips and tricks on what you can do today to instantly start decreasing the amount of time it takes for you to finish your project and improving your workflow. And I guess here's another one thing that it didn't really fit into the flow of what I'm talking about, but I think it's still kind of important to talk about. And that's, you know, when you're doing a project, don't overthink things too much, right? You just kind of have to like just get your hands dirty and just dive right in. A lot of times over preparation and overthinking about something becomes inefficient. And I'm a huge fan of being prepared for a project and getting things done right and as streamlined as I possibly can the first time around, maybe second time around. But sometimes when you think about stuff too long, there's gonna come to a point where it doesn't matter how much more you think about it, you just need to put that first line on that piece of paper or draw that first shape on that canvas in whatever program you're using or write that first line of code. Whatever it is, you just have to do it, right? And I think a lot of times, you know, especially when you're doing initial mock-ups, it's better to have 10, you know, like bad ideas, dare I say, you know, bad to mediocre ideas than it is to have that one perfect idea. Because what happens a lot of times is that when you create 10 bad ideas, it's so weird. It seems like there's always one good or great idea that kind of evolves from those 10 bad ideas. You know, whereas if you mull over the fact of trying to create that one perfect thing right off the beginning, you know, not only will you never get started, you missed out on opportunities to create something that could have actually been perfect. Now, I don't know if that last part made any sense or not, but I guess the point that I'm really trying to make is you can't really save time on anything you never started, right? So the key is don't mull over anything too hard and just get started on whatever project you have to do. So let me know what you guys think, if this was helpful, if it was not helpful, and you know, like if you do, sub if you loved. Good luck on all of your freelancing out there, and peace.